Okay, you're all good. Just count us in when you're ready to go, and we can go from there.
Yep, will do. So, yep, indeed, everyone, welcome to the marathon, and welcome to Sonic Adventure 2. I am Drakodan. This is going to be a bit of an interesting run, you know, a little bit of the old rust to shake off. Haven't really ran the game seriously since probably last year. I've been running on like a few hours of sleep, so this is going to be an interesting one, but we'll see what we can do with this. So, I'm going to count down if we're all ready. And just make sure, yep, looks like we're all good. I know that my split is definitely ready, so it's pretty much just making sure the guys in control are ready for us. I'm going to assume everything's a go. If not, I have got a timer on my end, so I will be able to say the accurate time. So let's get going in 3, 2, 1, go. So this is Hero Story. Sonic Adventure 2 is a little bit of an anomaly compared to many Sonic games in that you use multiple characters through the run with their own sets of controls and mechanics. You've got Sonic's speed stages, Tails' mech stages, and Knuckles' hunting stages, which we'll go into more detail as we get to them. With Sonic's gameplay, we start with boarding. This is one of the only sections of the game where I actually do this, and as soon as we get off the board, we're actually going to be approaching one of the potentially biggest skips in the run, but it is known for being very difficult and borderline random to hit, so I'm only going to give it one proper attempt, and I'm just going to carry on if I don't get it, because you can waste quite a bit of time trying to get this. So I'm just going to use my setup first. Let's go, please. Alright, so the skip attempt is initiated when I get a trick jump off the ramp. I'm going to try and get one good trick jump before moving on. It's just a little temperamental to get this. I'm pause buffering to try and get some inputs as close together as possible. Please, dude. I'm only going to give this like one more attempt before just forgetting about it. Seriously, I want to at least get the jump. It's worth it. Like, if I still get it, it still, like, saves a bit of net time. I'm just using a B input slightly too early before I'm pausing, I believe. Alright, seriously, last attempt, and if I don't get this, I'm just going to carry on. Alright, well, there you go. In the end, I didn't even get the skip. It only takes a few seconds per extra setup attempt, and the skip does save over 20 seconds if you get it, but a bit unfortunate to not get it after repeated attempts like that. What's essentially happening is that I'm trying to store a spin dash through the speed pad that was just before the ramp. Since the speed pads in this game, they don't just universally make you go faster, they pretty much reset your speed to a specific value, and the speed pads there actually make my speed too low for what is required to initiate the skip. So I need to find a way to not have them reset my speed, and from there, if I perform a trick jump, which requires me to also unroll from the spin dash before jumping, since you can't perform a trick jump out of ball form. Yeah, this game has a lot of technical jargon. I can be too fast for the trick and fly into the wall, which has a chance of putting me in a position so that I can land on the speed pads whilst out of bounds for like 3 frames, and if I get the right collision on the speed pad from there, it actually sends me sideways whilst I'm out of bounds and skips me a considerable distance through the stage. But, well. So instead we're coming out with a snazzy 237 City Escape, a roaring start. Truly the best start I've ever had. Unfortunately, as I said, there is a certain degree of randomness to whether that trick works. You saw I got the ramp jump, but it still didn't trigger. It's dependent on a lot of variables, like your speed and your position when you jump off the ramp, a lot of things like that. And it's not something that a runner can, like, 100% consistently account for. But due to the amount of time it saves, it's always worth having a go at. But we're just going to carry on without, and we're coming up to the first boss now, Bigfoot. So this is a fairly simple fight where we just want to use the front boxes here to get up to the cockpit really quickly, 4 times in a row. If that doesn't happen, you can use the back boxes here, and he's got pretty simple mechanics. He just flies around, occasionally goes out of bounds, but comes right back in, so it's a very simple fight. What isn't very simple is Knuckles' gameplay. So the objective of the Knuckles stages is you need to find 3 pieces of the Master Emerald, and these are randomly generated. in different locations, and we use hints to help us find where the pieces are. We can also just physically see the pieces hanging around in the stage. So even though I'm trying to use the hints, it's just on average going to be by far the fastest way to go through the stage. I am trying to keep an eye out as well for any pieces that I don't necessarily need to use a hint for. There's also a certain amount of logic that can be used to try and deduce where specific pieces are going to be. The way that the game generates the pieces is that the first piece is just completely random. The second piece is always going to be at least moderately far away from where the first piece is, because the game looks at all of the possible piece 2s and locks out the 50% that are closest to where your piece 1 was. And for the third piece, it does a lot of math, where it looks at where piece 1 and 2 were, and then it looks at all the possible locations of piece 3, draws like areas between all of the 3 pieces, like makes a load of big imaginary boxes, and chooses one of the pieces that results in one of the 50% largest cross sections. It's very, very mathematical. But the TLDR is piece 1 is random, piece 2 is going to be far away from piece 1, and within reason piece 3 can be almost anywhere, but it's very unpredictable. And as for the Tails stages, we already got through a Tails boss. Tails bosses are, for the most part, fairly straightforward, but Tails stages are really not very straightforward. Tails' movement is probably the most difficult of the 3 characters to get right. The issue with moving with Tails is that cornering and keeping your momentum is not very simple. If you corner too sharply with Tails, you just slow right down, lose all your momentum. So what you're going to see me do a lot of through the run is whenever I need to take a sharp corner, I'm either going to do it gradually and try and lean with the camera to let the camera do most of the turning. That actually works. Or if I can't do that and I just need to take a sharp corner immediately, I'm going to jump before I turn, because the momentum decay that occurs when you're ground cornering doesn't really happen when you're in the air. So for that corner just there that I took to the right, that was an example of turning with the camera, that I actually only had a gradual direction change on the control stick, and I just let the camera do it for me. And then that would be an example of a jumping turn. The jumping turns are a lot more common in the run, in my opinion. It's probably not a matter of opinion, but I'm not going to measure them up right now. Alright, so I just need to do a jump here to get an enemy. The gimmick of this stage is that you can see I'm targeting all these enemies. There are a bunch of locked doors, and in order to progress, to unlock the doors, you need to destroy groups of enemies as you're going through. So, fairly swift prison lane. There was some little movement-based strats that I didn't really go for. Some that are a lot more difficult than the time they grant, in my opinion. Like, when you get into the nitty-gritty of all the little strats you can use in this game, there are some truly ridiculous strats you can use through the stages that save barely any time but have significant risk. It's anyone who's ran games that have a lot of IL competition, I'm sure you know what I mean. So getting into Metal Harbor for Sonic, this is the first stage where we're going to be getting an upgrade. Sonic is going to be getting the light shoes just here at the top of the pulley, and this is going to let us light dash across trails of rings, just like this. It's a very nice piece of movement tech which lets you go fast, but slightly unfortunately it's on the same button as every other damn action in this game. I don't have too many outright complaints about this game, but one thing I would not mind being different is the fact that all of your actions are on the same button. Like, if you want to somersault, spin dash, light dash, bounce, all of those actions for Sonic, they are all on the action button, and they are context sensitive. So the button does different actions depending on the state you're currently in. It can be a little annoying at times when you are trying to do one action and you get a different action. Oh boy, come on. Alright, let's get on the slope and do this again. Dude, please get the spring. I've never had that much trouble trying to get the spring, not for a long time at least. Normally the homing attack can be relied upon to get to that spring fairly reliably. So mashing the A button on the rocket there actually lets you release the handle a couple of seconds earlier, which does save a nice little amount of time. I'm going to just try one more little loop skip here, jump over these speed pads. I mentioned earlier about how the speed pads in this game cap your speed value. The other factor of speed pads that is very relevant in sections like that is that they also lock your controls temporarily. So trying to exit that loop early and do a specific angled jump, that is basically impossible on certain loop sections if you've hit a speed pad immediately before, because you just don't have control over Sonic for a brief time. So everybody knows this cutscene, everyone memes it, blah blah blah, but this is a very difficult boss fight to optimize. I'm going to be going for a spin dashing strat, which basically no one else goes for in runs currently that I know of. The task gets 10-9-4 on this fight, so I'm going to try and get as close to that as possible. Let's see if I can get a 10. Oh, no, I messed up my position fit too, unfortunately. So we're just going to manipulate where Shadow's going and get a 13. It was pretty much as good as I could get after he jumped to attack. The point of the fight is that you can't reliably attack Shadow unless you're behind him. I say that, I ran straight into him before and hit him, because the game doesn't check to see whether you are using storage, which is a byproduct of what I was mentioning about every action being on the same button. That whilst you are holding the B button, there is a short delay before the game initiates a spin dash, and during that time the game considers you to be somersaulting, even though you're not using the somersault animation. So you still have the properties of a somersault, which includes the ability to damage enemies. So that gives the appearance of just being able to run into enemies and damage them. So Green Forest, this is a very technically demanding stage. There is another like big skip in the stage. It's not so much a big skip in that it skips a lot of the stage, but it does save a lot of time. It's going to be a wall run halfway through the stage. It's probably one of the most technically demanding things you can do in the game. So it's going to be another case of, I'm going to give this like 1 or 2 solid attempts, and if it's not looking like it's going, I'm just going to go on without it. This is, however, the last Sonic skip, which is kind of optional in this sense, in that, you know, I'm going to attempt it a bit, and if I don't get it, I'm going to move on. There are some major Sonic skips later in the run which are non-optional, as in, the run doesn't continue until I get the skips. So it starts just after I get this checkpoint, and let's see how this goes. Nope, that was a really, really bad loop speed interaction I got there. So what's happening is that I'm getting on the side of a loop to skew gravity, and I'm trying to homing attack into a trigger at a specific point. I'm going to give this one more attempt. And as I say, if this doesn't happen, I'm just going to move on without it. There is plenty of room for snazzy stuff later on in the run, and these skips are very difficult. Oh, come on. Alright. I cannot initiate the skip without a very specific position there, so I can't really justifiably try and save that. At least I got the good light dash there. That is not very common to get the good light dash straight across to the next spring without a very specific setup there. I was kind of lucky. But what would essentially happen is that I would fly sideways into the tree, and I'd be able to run up it at high speed, which you are definitely not supposed to be able to do. And from there, if I have a specific position on the tree, I'm able to exit it in a certain way and try and manipulate the camera so that I can actually see where I'm going and skip the entire upward section that I just did there. Which saves around about 15 seconds if done optimally, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but it's around about that area. And there's a couple of different methods you can use for the skip depending on how you land on the tree, where you land on the tree, like what your speed is. There's a lot of things to consider, but unfortunately I didn't even really get to the point of being on the tree. The first attempt looked like it could have been it, but landed in the wrong area, and then, yeah, you see how variable the results are, that sometimes the game's just like, no, you're not actually landing on this surface, you're just going to slide along the surface. It's really weird. Anyway, Pumpkin Hill, another stage that's very heavily memed. Knuckles gets his first upgrade, the Shovel Claws, and getting 3 pieces of the Emerald again. So this stage is a little different from Wild Canyon in that picking up the Shovel Claws, as I just did, is not optional. The game will only give me piece 3s that are underground. Like, I've had 2 pieces out in the open, this piece 3 is guaranteed to be underground. It's the game's way of ensuring that you've picked up the Shovel Claws. King of the Hill. Yep. So this is honestly one of the worst third pieces I could get. It's all the way on the other side of the stage, on this pumpkin mountain over here, and as I mentioned, it is underground. Alright, so 47 isn't the best time you can get in Pumpkin Hill for sure, but like it's RNG, there's not much you can do about it. We have a general range of times that we expect to see in each Knuckles stage. Wild Canyon, probably like 20 to 30. Pumpkin Hill, I'd say an average time for each stage. I'd say Wild Canyon is probably about a 25. Pumpkin Hill is around a 40 to 45. Aquatic Mine would be about a 30. Death Chamber, 50 to 55. And Meteor Herd probably about a 45 for average times. And then it can vary both ways from there. So for Mission Street, this is a very movement intensive stage. We get yet another upgrade. I'm going to go for another little trick here called a hover jump. So I use a pause there. It's the same sort of trick that I was using on City Escape Skip at the very start of the run, where I'm trying to pause buffer to get a couple of inputs as close together as possible. The hover upgrade lets Tails go across wide gaps, but if you initiate the hover while you are still rising in your jump, while you still have upward momentum, it essentially augments the upward momentum you get and lets you go higher than normal. It's not much of a difference, but it's enough to break the overall stage design of pretty much all of Tails' stages, where I'm not supposed to be able to get over those cages, I wasn't supposed to be able to get on top of that falling weight at the start of the stage, and the overall effect of that is that it is going to let me save a cycle by the end of the stage. Now, at this pace, I can't afford any more movement mistakes. I just hit the enemy there and slowed down. If I slow down much more, I won't be able to get this cycle just here, but we'll see how this goes. I don't think that's happening, unfortunately. After getting an imperfect launch off the speed pad under the bridge, I clipped the metal fence and lost some momentum. I think that's a little too much time lost to work with. So instead, we go to the front side. I was going to go towards the back end, where that rising barrel was, but you know, if you miss the cycle, you've got to wait a considerable amount of time for it to come down, and so I instead got what we call a half cycle. So I got 0.5 cycle. It's like lots of games getting like what, you know, first cycle, second cycle. Now we'll just get 0.5 cycle and call it not perfect. That's just kind of how this game rolls. So there's going to be some more ground-based cornering here, just using the camera. I swear I'm not angling the control stick too heavily when I do that, even though it looks like I'm turning really steeply. Yeah, 214. It's whatever, as I say, not the first cycle. But we do what we can. And speaking of doing what we can, going to be coming into Aquatic Mine here, which has some potentially brutal piece layouts, but some ways that we can try and mitigate it as well. We get an intro cutscene here, which is going to give me the opportunity to check for a few free pieces. There are some locations, there we go, there's a free piece on the right, so I already know where my first piece is. I'm not going to need to get a hint for this, but I do go up and get the water level to start the stage. This is pretty much required for running this stage. And I didn't destroy the beetle enemy there, but I don't think it can possibly have a free piece if this is my first piece. I'm ready to be punished though. But I don't think piece 3 can be Guardian of the Switch. I got 3 fans and didn't see! Did I really get the middle one? Nice, I got the 4:3 piece. I am playing in 4:3 aspect ratio, and this is the free piece which you can't see particularly well in a 4:3 aspect ratio because of the way that the video is cropped. Like in 16:9, during the intro cutscene, you've got plenty of time to see that. I thought there was an outside possibility that I did see that, but I kind of wrote it off as like, nah, no way, especially after I saw the other free piece, so wow. Unintentionally throwing away a situation of getting 2 free pieces. That was objectively a fantastic piece set. 31 is still not a bad time for the stage, but it should have been considerably faster, considering I had that other free piece. Oh well. Now, Route 101, a little bit of a break in the middle of the run, in that driving is not too involved. It's not boring, I would say, but it's certainly not very technically demanding. The main thing that I'm doing through the stage is that I'm keeping an eye on my ring count, and I am constantly drifting back and forth, as you can see, to conserve my speed cap. The game has 2 different speed caps when you are driving like this. You've got just the regular speed and you've got the boosted speed. If you initiate a drift like this, your speed doesn't actually decrease from the boost cap back down to the regular speed cap. and you can maintain it as long as you are just going along a flat surface like this. If you hit an obstacle or if you go up a slope, that does decrease your speed. So we use boosts at specific intervals to try and manage it. Oh, please. So yeah, you can see here I'm going considerably slower, but then we hit a down slope which speeds us back up, and I get my next boost on that ring trail anyway, so that's what I mean by there's some regular sections through the stage where there's the potential to be slowing down, but then we just make sure we're in a situation where we can get right back up to speed immediately. So I'm going to intentionally hit the wall here on this double turn, helps me bounce around the U-turn a little, and you don't spin out unless you hit a wall very, not necessarily straight on, but you need to hit it fairly straight on in order to spin out. There's quite a lot of leeway for it. There's my next boost. This is an important one to get because this is quite a long straightaway with an upslope. And then I'm going to get my last boost in the little pit lane here on the balloon. These balloons always give you a boost. Otherwise, you get them at specific ring intervals. It is based on a separate value that the game doesn't outwardly show. But the pit stop balloons will pretty much always give you a boost. So if nothing else, you can always rely on those sections to help you get back up to speed. And a 2:15, I believe that is, or 2:16. I'm not seeing my splits too well right now, and it's not the best time ever, but the time variance in that stage is honestly measured in single seconds, i.e. a 2:14 would have been a very good time, like a 2:13 would have been a fantastic time, and 2:15 is like, yeah, that's pretty normal. So unless something catastrophically goes wrong in Route 101, such as taking a death, which is possible, the game doesn't have any checkpoints in that stage, so taking a death in that stage is actually very costly, but it's pretty difficult to manage that. So Hidden Base, entering what we typically refer to as the trio of like the most technically demanding stages in the run. For each character respectively, you've got Tails' Hidden Base, Sonic's Pyramid Cave, and Knuckles' Death Chamber. Hidden Base, you can see, has a lot of hover jumping, a lot of outward bounds shenanigans. This really is the stage that puts hover jumping to the greatest effect, and using a couple more pause hovers to try and get as much height as possible, so we can, again, skip large gaps, much larger than we're supposed to be able to skip. 53 checkpoint, not too bad, it's a pretty low 53. Please. Alright, well I still had some speed with that. I'd prefer to not have to slow down at all there, but that's very difficult to get through that door without any speed loss whatsoever. Probably a 112 checkpoint? Yeah. Don't think I can quite walk over that floor. That part of the floor rises and falls based on a global timer, and if the checkpoint had been 111, I would have been happy to just run over it, but unfortunately, jumping. And I say unfortunately because, oh dear, speaking of, I say unfortunately because your grounded speed is a little higher than your airspeed in this game. Anytime that you need to jump, it does necessitate losing a bit of speed. Thankfully, the checkpoint isn't too far back from where we were there, and I'm just going to do it right this time, using hover jumps to again get out of bounds. Can use the fence here to actually get a little bit of a speed boost. It's a weird interaction. I don't quite understand why that happens, but it does happen, so use it. And just a couple more hover jumps and the stage is done. So honestly not a bad stage, coming out with a 145 aside from the little death that I took, but as you see, it wasn't the worst death in the world, just putting me back like 10-15 seconds or so. Some of the checkpoint locations in this game can be pretty convenient, some of them can be not so convenient, but we just try and be more careful than usual around those risky situations. So for Pyramid Cave, I mentioned this is probably Sonic's most technical stage, and being how technical Sonic is, this is probably the most technical stage, full stop. Pretty much every single section of the stage is a trick in some form or another. I was going down the first hallway there, trying to ride certain parts of the floor so the game would consider me going downhill and force me to accelerate. You know, got a weird bounce off the hourglass by jumping into it a specific way. I've already done another couple of pieces of movement tech which are a little too fast to really keep up with. Now that we have the bounce, we can use a new glitch with Sonic, super bouncing, to gain massive amounts of height off a bounce. Basically what's happening here is that when you are in the bounce form, once you contact a wall, any forward momentum you have is converted into upward momentum. we can skip through the door using a very specific position there that is a lot more precise than it looks. Once again, riding the floor in a specific way to try and speed up rather than slow down. I need this checkpoint. Well, I don't need it, but I want it. This is, like I say, it's not an easy stage. And there are no more checkpoints after this, so considering this part has some risk to it, snake skip. The other thing we can do with bounce has been getting skewed gravity, so we can bounce almost horizontally from a skewed surface. Yeah, this game is... it's technical. Alright. So I missed the rail there, but we can get another super bounce to get out of here. Gonna chain 3 spin dashes back to back here to set me up for another super bounce there. Get on the side of here to do another skewed gravity bounce straight into the goal ring. It's a bit of a stage, yeah. I mean, clean. Was it really clean? It was a 138. I like to get a 130 in that stage, but it looks clean if you just don't let the audience know any better. So yeah, we'll say it was clean.
Chamber is appropriately named.
I'm doing a couple of free piece checks as the stage starts. I'm doing a couple of free piece checks, so we're going to progress as normal. Didn't see anything, so we're going to progress as normal. So since I have a nice stock of lives, I'm going to try the death strats that we commonly use in this stage now. If you remember what I said about how the game generates pieces, piece 2 is always going to be far away from where piece 1 was. This is far away from the start of the stage. So if we grab the first piece and die, there is a decent chance that the game is going to give us a respawn piece. I'm going to spend a couple of lives here trying for it. Green isn't the most likely. I'm going to try one more time and just go on if I don't get one. No, unfortunately. And didn't get the free piece either. Oh well. Okay, this is interesting. So I'm going to get this piece with an out of bounds clip, which honestly this is the only reason this is even worth it, because this piece is otherwise very far out the way and really not worth it. And I'm going to die again, just so that I don't have to travel. This isn't necessarily to re-roll a good piece, but to cut out travel time, because I'm going to get teleported back to the start of the stage, and this is generally a much more favourable location to move from. With this third piece that I have, it wasn't necessarily faster to take the death, but you really just have to try and play the probabilities in this stage. Dude, really? What? I don't know how I missed that piece there. What is going on? I seriously don't know how I didn't get the piece both those digs. Some of the acceptable dig ranges in this game can be interesting, to say the least. Like, there are some underground pieces where they have a very generous range, and others that do not have a generous range. That's clearly one of them. I seriously don't know how I missed the piece multiple times there. And 0 rings with the weight dropping and an enemy trying to get me, that was, you know, that's interesting situation to be in. We just try and make do. Alright, so here's a little strat. Oh, I'm really glad that still worked. I was too far across. So that's a relatively new strat, you know, relative to how long we've ran this game, where for some reason it took us absolutely forever to work out that if you get hit by a fireball, Boom Boo goes into a static animation that he's not going to leave where he laughs at you, and the Hourglass Ghost that we typically have to wait to be able to hit doesn't run away. So we can get the Ghost with the Hourglass several seconds earlier than we're supposed to be able to, and then we just do a pretty elementary one cycle, which just has some precise movement. Speaking of precise movement, super bounces again, except they're on this very narrow platform. And I mentioned before about how you need to bounce before you contact a wall, and that is very specific terminology. You need to bounce, you need to release a spin dash, jump, and then bounce, all before you hit a wall that's in front of you. And these platforms are really narrow, so any super bounce that I'm performing there essentially takes place in a short frame window. That I need to essentially release the spin dash, jump, and then bounce in, depending on where you are, it's like a 4 to 5 frame window. So you basically need to do 2.5 inputs in as many as 5 frames. And probably as little as 4 frames, and depending on how some of your inputs are distributed along that frame range, some of them may necessarily need to be frame perfect. It's a little unreasonable. So I just get a few of them back to back there, it's no big deal. And that lets you bounce straight up to Egg Golem's weak spot. So, hello? Can you please destroy the enemy? Thank you. Space stages. Oh dear. This is every single stage from this point on, with the exception of Meteor Herd, has a major skip, and they are all dangerous. With Eternal Engine here, I'm going to need to really focus on this first. Thank you! Okay, so that is a very temperamental skip. I try to approach the corner where I clipped out there in a very specific way. I then need to jump and shoot simultaneously so that I break both of the wooden boxes and hopefully end up underneath the metal box in such a way that it drops on top of me and pushes me out of bounds. Since I need the metal box to fall on top of me, that's not something that you get repeated attempts at. There is another box on the other side of the room that you can use as a backup, and if that fails, you need to get the checkpoint and then die so that you can reset the stage. Because that clip out, as far as we know, is not possible to initiate without a box falling on top of you, and this saves more than enough time to be worth going for repeated times. I mentioned about how City Escape was worth the repeated attempts and time loss. Didn't end up being worth it in the end, but this skip saves far more time than City Escape skip saves. Like, City Skip is in the region of 20 seconds, this is in the region of 40 seconds. That is like a major skip. Which is, even if I hadn't gotten it first try, it would be worth sticking around for until you get it. But actually getting that skip to work, it is more temperamental than I care to admit. So anytime that I'm able to get that first try, I'm very grateful for. So Meteor Herd here, this is the final RNG stage. Let's see what pieces we get. Okay, this is a pretty good first piece, but since it's in the middle, I don't know whether I'm going to be going to the bottom or the top. I prefer to go to the top, since it's a lot easier to come down, so I'd like to not have to go up more than once. Guns machine. Okay, well, I am going up, but this is not a particularly good piece at the top. It's quite far out of the way. I do get to come down immediately after, though, and then the game gets to screw me by giving me a third piece that's still up at the top. Guaranteed. I'm calling this. Like... Okay, that's actually good. That's just over here. So overall, a pretty good piece set. 41 is... I'm perfectly happy with that time. But in that stage, it's like when you're going up to the top and then going down to the bottom and then going back up to the top again, you end up wasting quite a lot of time. So as smooth as the stage is, and as easy as the movement is in the stage, since you're spending a lot of it gliding, diving down, taking rockets up, yeah, the RNG can really not help out in that stage sometimes. So Rouge, we are coming towards the end of the game now. This fight is going to be fairly simple as long as I don't mess up the first hit. I'm just going to go straight towards her as I gain control and drill dive on top of her. There we go. And now, as long as you remain airborne, Rouge's AI is very passive. So that's meant to be a long, drawn-out fight. You're all getting flung everywhere. But like I say, as long as you are airborne, she just doesn't really react and just lets you jump into her without many issues. So... It's not a particularly demanding fight as long as you start it correctly. What is demanding, though, is this stage. Probably people who are like tangentially familiar with speedrunning this game may know of what's coming in this stage. CGSS, Crazy Gadget Skip. I mentioned about how there's skips which are not optional for me to skip. Like, I need to perform the skip. And yeah, it's tricky. The gist of this is that I'm going to need to change gravity in one of the next rooms, get in a specific spot, and do a spin dash jump that will hopefully let me go out of bounds whilst avoiding a couple of invisible kill planes, and then the camera's going to invert on me, not let me see where I'm going, and I need to fall through the rest of the stage and land in the goal ring. Okay, so I'm out of bounds. Good. That is honestly the hard part in my opinion. And now, as you can see, I can't see where I'm going. I'm just using a couple of background cues to judge where to go. And easy. It's not easy, trust me, that is not an easy skip, but we'll call it easy for the sake of, you know, making me look good at the game. That is me, good joke, me good at the game. That is, yeah, interesting. I'm not so sure about that one. But it does mean that I get to relax now. We do have one more stage coming up, Final Rush, but the skip is considerably easier than the skips that we've done so far in the run. So at this point, I'm pretty much out of the woods. But this boss is really hard, it kills people in casual runs all the time. Yeah, but it's an easy boss. We'll just do this. We'll just shoot him. We'll just damage tank the laser, and it's like, yeah, it's 14 seconds. It's free every time. It's it's free. It's easy. That's what people say about speedruns, even when it's not free. That is honestly a not trivial fight. Like, you need to handle it correctly. You need to take damage correctly. Because if you start getting hit by the laser, that will kill you very quickly. And if you accidentally punch Eggman and send him all the way across the screen, then it's going to be pretty difficult to avoid that laser, considering it swings quite fast once it's crossed the whole screen. So skewed gravity, once again, we can use the rail there to achieve skewed gravity. And as long as I maintain above a specific speed value here, which thankfully falling includes, and I don't go to a specific direction, I'm able to maintain this angle, and I'm currently just falling around all of the kill planes in the stage. I'm falling almost horizontally. Then I reset gravity at a specific time, turn to the left, and at this point I am just falling towards the end of the stage. This is literally all that remains of the stage, is that I'm just going towards the goal ring at the end. This somehow works. This was allowed to be put into the final product. It's best to not ask too many questions with this sort of thing. The only thing that I'm taking into consideration here is that I am making sure that I avoid, some kill planes at the end of the stage. There's these 3 pillars that I'm falling towards. If I was directly behind the central pillar, I would hit one last kill plane. So I just need to make sure I get past it and then go more to where the goal ring is, which is right here. Just fall straight into it. Again, super elementary. 69. Good split time. That is very good. 1:21:69. I'm glad that I didn't get a faster time than that. Unless, I could have got 1:20:69. That would have been acceptable. But, pretty much anything else in the second range, I don't want to take that. So coming up to the final fight here, Shadow 2. This is the final fight of the run. And I'm just going to use a homing attack strat to try and keep him locked down. 5 hits and he's done. So I'm going to be counting them out, and time is on the 5th hit. 2. 3. 4. Time. Alright, we're just gonna pretend that was a really, really swift run. It was a few minutes underestimate. Oh man, it looked good. Skips went well, aside from some stuff at the start of the run, but I was more than 4 minutes underestimate. Don't tell people that I was using a skip that saves 2 minutes across the course of the run by removing some cutscenes. It is legit though, I didn't cheat. It is legit. It just doesn't factor into the run timing itself, since we use IGT rather than RTA. But for the sake of a marathon, why not trim down the total run time, help everything stay on schedule, make the run look a bit better than it actually was, you know what I'm saying? But overall, not too bad, and this was a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you guys very much for letting me take part in this. Great event so far, great cause, and hopefully the rest of the event goes very smoothly. Let's see what we've got up next. Let me check out the schedule. Castle of Illusion next. Yes, that is a good game. Is it the Genesis one? I'm not sure. Well, regardless if it's the Genesis one or the Master System one, they're both really good. Please do check it out. Please do consider donating to the cause. Thank you again for having me, and I will see you guys around.